Turned out to be a fairly nice day again. It doesn't necessarily look like progress. It looks like I'm getting further away from being done, but I've just taken the rear frame off so that I can run the fuel piping and the electrical wire down the other side. And I'm really pleased that I've made the car fairly modular, so it's fairly easy to get to everything to take it apart. It's still a pain in the neck, but if I couldn't do this, it'd be an even bigger pain. And I've made up the fuel line that runs along there, kind of comes along the chassis rail, dives underneath the throttle pedal mount, which is what that shaft is, through the firewall and up. I've put a anti-vibration loop which sits underneath the fuel pump. That should clear the bonnet. It clears all the throttle linkages. To get this in place, you have to remove that piece of panel, which does mean this flops around a lot. I'm considering, probably don't need to, I was thinking of remaking that in the 2mm aluminium just to make it a bit stiffer, but it's fairly stiff with that floor piece in there. But to get that out, you have to take off that front under tray. You have to take out this piece, but it's all pretty easy. You can get to all the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to put this back in now. The really cool thing is, because it all comes apart so easily, it's actually pretty easy just to kind of sit that in where it needs to go. You can almost do it with one hand. And then get this all connected up. Same at the back end. So I'll put it all back together now so we can see what it looks like. I was getting a bit tired of getting up and down and lying under the car, so I thought I'd do this next rather than doing the rear under tray. But I had to take the back half of the frame off, of course, to get to that. I think I'm done for the day, but I did get the main battery cable routed, although not wired in yet. I need to crimp on the end connectors, cut it in the middle so it can go to the cutout switch. But that runs along the chassis rail exactly the same as it did in the originals. Over the cross member, I might put a little bit of rubber strip or something there just so there's no danger of that chafing. I don't think there is. I don't think it can move. It goes through the corner, just up in there, comes up. There's another clip there, and then that will attach up like that with another terminal that screws onto there. And then this is your, whoops, sounds very rattly. This is your main power pickup then off these points. And on the other side, I got the fuel line in. It's fairly straight. There's a few little kinks and things in it. It's out of the way, so it can't be kicked or knocked, not easily anyway. And there's just enough room at the back there. So I'll put another compression fitting on there. But what I may actually do is I've tested the fuel pump when I rebuilt it. I haven't tested all this fuel piping and my filter and that sort of setup. So maybe what I'll do is once the battery's connected up, I'll have power running to the front of the car. I can connect to the fuel pump, check that the earths are working. The other thing I did is, I keep finding bolts everywhere, nuts and bolts, is I put some heat shrink on the braided earth lead just because I hadn't fully attached the bottom end of it yet. I hadn't decided where I was going to bolt it on. It doesn't really matter, but I'll probably just go there. And having it flapping around just tied to the negative terminal was a bit dangerous. I almost shorted the battery out with it. So a bare braided cable didn't seem like a good idea. I thought, let's insulate that just to be safe. This will loop up like that. Again, that'll be all nice and neat, out of the way, can't really rattle. So that should be quite good. And the fuel line just clears the seat. I may need to modify the seat base on that side just to give me a bit of clearance around the clips. This side it's okay, it's pretty close. Fuel line here goes up and then down under the throttle pedal. There's nothing sharp there, there's actually a nice curved boss, so it's sort of following that. And then it comes up, another clip to the anti-vibration coil. I wish I got this little bit here a little bit neater, but I need a straight bit there for that fitting. So it would have been a bit neater if it had come around a bit tighter, but I don't fancy my chances of fixing that now without crushing the tube or something, so I'm probably just going to leave that. I do have more fuel line, so I could remake that, but I think that'll be all right. It's probably just going to annoy me now, isn't it? So that should be the fuel setup from the back of the car, through the pump, through the filter, into the carbs. So I think probably be tomorrow's job to test that out. I did have to modify the piece that goes across there, the board, just to notch out the corners a little bit more, just in there. This is my floor piece that fits in here. I had to modify that as well because of the cable, so the wood has to sit that side of it. Turns out the stain wasn't fully dry on that, so I'm covered in black stain at the moment, but I think that'll work. And then looking at the rear under tray, it's pretty much flat. Again, there's a couple of rivets you have to get around, and the main thing here is the bottom of the diff pumpkin. Might need a little bit of a depression hammered into it, and also I have to remember the hole for the filler plug. I still need to do the hole for this one. I need to mark where that's going to go. I think, yeah, I need to sort of transfer that down somehow. I'll have to think of a way to make a little gauge or a little tool so I can do that. But it's looking good. It's all nice and clean. There's not many bolts holding everything together at the moment, but it's holding together well. And I might just check. I can't easily. Oh no, I can check the seat fitting because it's located by pins, so the position of it is very fixed. No, that still fits as well, so that's good. Yes. Yeah. So it just kind of clears all the seat, which is good. It's very tight though. But at least those clips are rubberized clips, so it'll it's not going to wear through the leather or whatever it is I use on the seats, hopefully. And of course I had to modify the driver's side floor as well, just to clear the pipe there. Oh, that's another thing that'll annoy me. It would be nice if that aluminium followed that, but small details. I suppose I could remake that panel if I really had to, but I think I can probably live with that for now. It's straight, so that's not too bad. It's the next day again, and I'm just working on the wiring. I did realize there's another thing I need to sort out, which is the brake light switch. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to modify this bracket. I'm going to basically remake this little piece. This is the clutch stop. Another thing I need to do is make a bracket down, bolts on against the bell housing for the clutch return spring, although I don't really need one because of the way this is weighted. It falls off the release bearing anyway, but it'd be good to have a fairly weak spring there just to bring the pedal back so it doesn't rattle around. But I'm going to add to this bracket. I'm going to weld a piece that comes across and up, which solves another thing I've been worried about, which is this is only fixed by one bolt. And so I'm always worried that's going to rotate. So that'll stop that rotating because it'll be fixed in 2 points. And then I will make a little bracket that goes underneath here. I'm going to mount the brake lever switch underneath there. Somewhere like that. And make this is how it was done on the Austin 7. There's just a little metal strap that goes around there with a pinch bolt. And that's all you need to be able to hook that spring to. And then when you depress the brakes, that rod moves forward and that'll activate the switch. That way the switch is all hidden, it's all nicely under there. I can run the wiring up through there somewhere. I may, kind of needs to come up. Yeah, I'm not sure where. Maybe up under there and up through the firewall, something like that. But it should be possible to hide the wiring under there, or at least bring it up underneath and up the firewall. And then for the main battery cable, I've started crimping on the connectors. So the connectors are all numbered. So we'll see the number there. I think this is a 35/8. And the size of the crimp matches the diameter of the copper inside the wire. And then what I use is one of these hydraulic crimping tools. These are really cheap from China, but they work really well. And you can see the jaws are numbered. So those are 35 jaws, and it just works like a little hydraulic bottle jack, I guess. As you crimp it up, the jaws close, and that gives you the really good proper crimp to the cable there. And then I know people do it, but you shouldn't solder these. You should apparently never solder crimps, because all that happens is the solder wicks up the wire through capillary action, and you end up with a stress point, and it can harden there where the solder has joined all the copper wires together. So it's better to do proper crimps. And if you do a proper crimp that is effectively welded in place, that shouldn't come off. And then I'm going to put, I might need a bigger piece of heat shrink. Heat shrink over it. I wipe the lettering off the heat shrink before I do that, just because it looks too modern. And yeah, that's basically all there is to that. This cable is sort of double insulated, double jacketed. So the tricky part when doing anything like this wiring wise is trimming off the insulator without damaging the wires. So what I try to do is, on this one it makes it easy. You can get through the outer black layer pretty easily, and then you've got this inner tough layer. I score around it, but you don't score all the way through, and you should then be able to sort of tear it. It tears off, so you're not in danger of cutting all the way through and nicking the wires. Although if you lost a conductor or two on this, I don't think it would matter too much because it's such thick cable. And I deliberately used a fairly chunky cable because this battery isn't huge, but you can see there's not a lot of room for a big battery in there. And you've got quite a long run up to the starter motor, so you want to have as little voltage drop as possible. Yeah, I'll keep going with this. It's just to show the lug with the heat shrink in place. I just use my paint stripper gun to do that. The heat shrink just keeps that joint sealed up, so just keeps things nice and tidy. Have the main battery cable in place and actually connected up. I left the lead on the positive fairly long, just to give a bit of wiggle room. I'm not sure exactly where I'll run that cable, just so it's out of the way of everything, but just in case I end up swapping batteries or something like that, I've got a little bit of length to play with. But that comes, the earth goes straight to the chassis, negative earth. The positive comes around here into the back of the switch, I'm actually going to make a wooden cover that screws onto this piece to enclose the back of that switch, because this is all at ground potential, this is at battery positive, and there's only about 1.5 inches of clearance there. If you've got stuff in there rattling around, tools or something, you could short out the battery. So that should be disabled. Runs up here straight onto the starter solenoid, all nice and neat. So with that disabled, that shouldn't work. And theoretically, let's try it. Oh, the wheels are off the ground anyway. This should turn the starter. Yeah, so that works. I just realised last night when I went in, I had a rash on my arm. I couldn't tell what it was from. I've just realised what it was actually from. It's from rubbing against the fiberglass on the exhaust. Because I had to put my arm up underneath there, so that's something I need to watch for. So with the power enabled, if I hook a jumper lead over to the fuel pump, I should actually be able to see if the fuel system works as well. So I might do that. I haven't put the cable, the connector on the end of the fuel pipe yet, because I do want to try it with a rubber hose first. So I might try that now. I've attached the fuel line, got it going into a petrol can. I may actually just use rubber hose for that connection. I think that'll be easier than having a hard line there, and I'm still worried about relative movement between the chassis and the body. There shouldn't be much there because it's kind of bolted down, but it might just be easier to have just the fuel line there, and you won't see that. That's all behind the seat. So I may just do that. It also means that I've got a simple connection at this point. It's just a rubber hose over the end of the fuel line. I have powered up the pump enough, and it's just started to fill up the fuel bowl. So this is my, to be careful with this, this is my positive. So that's filling up, and it should be, whoops, we've got a leak. We've got a big leak. I do have a fire extinguisher standing by just in case. I'm going to make sure all the leaks and things are fixed before I continue. And then I should be able to fire it up. So we'll do that. I need to disconnect that battery. That seems better now. I just hadn't done up the fuel float bowl tight. It was completely loose. So pump's giving the occasional tick now. My carb's flooding, I think. So again, I think I need to maybe reduce the pressure on that valve a little bit. Either that or my needles are sticking. I'm going to wire up something different here. I don't like connecting this to and from there because it'll cause sparks, and of course sparks in petrol wouldn't be good. So I may hook up a separate bit of wiring actually tied to that, so I can use a remote switch while I'm still playing with this, trying to figure out why it's leaking. These SU carbs only need about, I think it's 1.5 psi of pressure. This is a low pressure pump, so it should be fine, but I can adjust it on the filter regulator there. It's one of the reasons I got it. It may just be that I haven't run this in a long time, so the fuel, the needle valves might be sticking a little bit. It's started raining. I've got the door up because I want to try running this engine. Fuel system seems to have settled down. I've got it on a switch Just ticking every so often. Nothing's leaking. I just flooded the carbs because I was using the little tickling pins, but this should actually run now. I suspect I don't need choke because there's so much fuel in it. Let's give it a try. I don't want to run it for too long because there's no coolant in it. Well, that worked fine. It's really loud because there's no muffler on it, of course. It's just straight pipes. That seems to be working great. I'll leave it sitting there. I'm not sure if it should keep ticking like that. I can't actually remember. My MGB doesn't have an SU fuel pump. It's got a facet style pump in it. The SU was replaced years and years and years ago. And my Austin also has an electric fuel pump. So this is actually the first time I've ever used an SU fuel pump. So I'm not entirely certain how they should work. So I'm just worried that continual ticking means there's a slow leak somewhere. I can't see anything leaking. It's ticking once every 3 seconds or so. But that works well. I've also tested the starter solenoid connection, and that works fine as well. So yeah, I think we'll call that a success. One comment about these battery switches. So this the key's removable. This is a Durite brand one, which is, as far as I can tell, it's a really good, solid brand. Of course, you can get lots of really cheap ones these days, and I don't think I would trust them. They're sort of plasticky, from China type things. I don't know if I'd just trust those, but this works well. And it's got a nice, solid clonk to it. The other thing I did is I just radiused that corner, so now it doesn't look like it shouldn't be like that. So that was an easy fix. I think the next thing I will do is sort out the brake switch, sort out the cover that goes on the back of that. I was considering 3D printing one, but it's not really in keeping with period, so I'll make a little wooden one that'll just screw to the to that wooden board that goes across, and then it's on to making the rear under tray. I don't think I've got enough fuel line, otherwise I would try lifting up the thing. I don't think there's going to be any problem with that fuel pump being able to pump fuel from the top of the tank, sucking it up. I think that'll be fine. So that looks good. I may put my drip tray back under the car. I'm going to vacuum around it first, just because there's swarf and bits of wire everywhere. I'll put that back under the car and just keep an eye out for leaks now that the fuel system is effectively pressurized, even though there's no pressure in it, or not very much anyway. One thing it might be worth doing is you can get little overflow pipe versions of these. These are just vented, but there is another version where there's actually an overflow pipe. So it would be quite nice to sort of run those down so that when they do overflow, it's not just dripping straight down onto the steering box and the engine and the horn wiring, all that kind of stuff. It's raining again. It's been raining on and off all day. I didn't get quite as far as I wanted on the car, but I've been doing lots of little jobs and I have got the undertray finished. So I used my step drill to drill out the hole on the other side, which wasn't letting it sit over the rivet head. And I have also drilled a 2-inch hole underneath the gearbox filler, and there's a rubber bung in there now, so that lets you get access to the drain plug bottom of the gearbox. The floors I have trimmed around the edges, may need a little bit more. It's not too bad. It would be nice if it kind of revealed itself all in one go, but I think nobody else is going to notice details like that. One interesting thing will be from the side of the car, the chassis is all going to be black, and then there will be this thin aluminium strip that you can see, which is just the edge of that undertray. Getting the undertray in place isn't as hard as you think it might be. There's 40 odd screws holding it in place, bolts, but to get it on the car, I just put it underneath the car and then I loosely clamp one side up. So I lift one edge up, clamp it loosely with the quick release clamps, go around to the other side, do the same, lift it up and clamp it. And it kind of falls into position because of those holes around the rivet heads. They locate it. And then you just get a couple of bolts through. I find putting one in each diagonal corner works fine. And then that's it. It's actually pretty easy. I've only got 4 bolts holding it in place at the moment. And then those strips that run down the middle, the spacers, even those aren't too hard to get in place, especially if you can get to the middle one, because you can put the strip in at an angle, get the middle hole lined up, and then you just sort of rotate it into position and drop the bolts through, or rather they'll come up from underneath. What else did I do? I took the firewall off and I drilled out the hole for the grommet. That's for the speedo cable, the tachometer cable, and the one above it is for the oil gauge, because this needs to be able to fit through that hole. You can see I'm using my other holes for the fuel pump. I did fix this piece of pipe because it was bugging me. I had an extra joiner, so I just cut the pipe, made this to fit, and then put a joiner in there. That seems to work fine. I've had another go with the fuel system, nothing's leaking. What else have I done? That's the passenger wooden floor in place. I may make a slightly neater one, but that kind of gives the idea. It's a little bit tricky getting it in and out, but it just kind of sits down on those pins and that holds that in place. Maybe it'll rattle around. I might need a little bit of foam or something underneath there, but I think that'll be fine. And I made a little battery switch cover, so it fits down over the sides of the switch. There's a piece of rubber underneath there just in case, just to separate it from the undertray. This stuff is, they use it in ute beds or truck beds. I think it's recycled tyres. It's thick rubber. It's about 3/16 thick. It may actually be worth just lining the whole inside of this with this stuff, so that things don't rattle around in there and there's a little bit of sound deadening. So that fits there, and then the seat fits in like that. I have my battery cables in place. That's off because I've been disconnecting the earth just while I've been working on the car. So that cable should all be out of the way. May need a little bit of rubber or something on there just so it doesn't chafe on the edge. And I think that's it. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's taken me all day. I haven't got to the other side where I want to make that modification to that, so that'll be tomorrow's job. But yeah, the undertray looks good. I need to, next week when all the shops are open again and the businesses are back, order longer bolts. So at the moment this front one, it's not actually bolted up there. I think that should be good. I have to check with the seat back that it doesn't get in the way of the cables, but I'm pretty sure it won't because the seat it's almost vertical, which is just the way they were. Put this in place. So there's the seat. I've taken the seat belts out while I've been playing with everything, just so they don't get in the way. And I think that's everything. Still need to make the cover for the starter. Let's see. This may actually start. Oh no, I've got the magneto cut off, but there's the starter solenoid which you can get to. The fuel pump's not on. So you can probably hear it ticking. I think it ticks once every 5 seconds or so. Very positive connection on this switch, so you definitely know it's on or off. Like I say, I've been disconnecting the earth terminal. That's one reason why I insulated that, because normally you wouldn't do that, but because I have been doing that, I was worried that that would fall against the positive terminal. So I think that's it. If I can sort out that piece tomorrow and then look at the rear under tray, which apart from the dome needed underneath the rear axle, I'm not sure how deep that would need to be. Let's see. It's a bit tricky to get to everything. Obviously there's a drain plug there. So you need quite a bit of a little relief there for that, I would say. So probably what I'll do for that is just have a cutout, and I'll make a separate piece that bolts onto the under tray. I think trying to make a sheet and then putting that dome in it without distorting everything else will be quite tricky. And the under tray will need a few little cutouts. There's a rivet, some bolt heads, another rivet at the back, and that's about it. So I'll probably curve that up here, and then the tail will also somehow sit flush with that. I won't know about that until I actually get to it, but I think that's it for today.